Thank you, Chair. I think it's not, hopefully not predetermined to say that I think most of councillors have a lot of concerns about the current proposals as they stand. And many of us make those concerns heard in meetings with residents, in our meetings with GCP officers and so on, including, very pertinent comments about Adam Brooks, about people, how the different low income exemptions would potentially work, the zone itself, the zone boundary itself, and many other aspects of the scheme. But that's, I think, precisely why we have a consultation, so those responses could be analyzed. And there's not the point of debate today. So what's in front of me, what I see in front of me, is a decision on whether a referendum could be a good way to sort out, on one hand, some of the transport challenges, transport issues that we're having at the moment in our county, and secondly, a way to sort out or perhaps get out of this democratic deficit that many of our residents experience at the moment. And I think on both counts, I don't think the referendum is the right solution. And I would like to explain why, whilst we're in this debate today. First, I find it very difficult to have a referendum or any yes or no answer on a scheme that doesn't exist yet, because I really do hope whatever scheme, if a scheme proceeds from the GCP's analysis, would look different to the one that it is today. So if we had a referendum, say tomorrow, what I would be asked to vote on as a Cambridgeshire resident would be to have an ideological vote, or whether I ideologically oppose, in an ideological sense, a form of charging or not, without any kind of detail. And I think a lot of people are in the middle. I think, of course, some people would oppose it under any circumstances, but just speaking to residents, for example, what would you say to people who are saying, well, I would consider a city center only zone, but not a white zone, for example? There are a lot of people who are on the middle ground, for whom, like, making a purely ideological decision wouldn't really work, although for some, it would. I don't think, I also want to address the point about, the local elections and councillors not having a mandate, because I actually don't think a referendum is necessarily more representative than local elections, and the opposite. So if I was looking at the turnout in the county council elections in 2021, there are, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, 2 divisions in the whole county council that have a turnout of over 50% in the local elections. One is in Cambridge City and one is in March, actually, I think. So in that case, if hypothetically we stood on a, on all our leaflets, we had like one position on this or the other, you could still make the argument the majority of people in any division didn't vote for any of us here. So like, if you are opposed to this, you could still say like, well, the councillors, even if they stood on a mandate, are not representative of the majority of people in their division, let alone Cambridgeshire, even within, even if they came first in the first past the post system. So I do find the argument a bit difficult in that sense, in terms of what does representation actually mean. And referendums, as well as local elections, in my view, are not the most representative way, because the same people who are more likely to vote in local elections to be voting for us are the same groups of people who are more or less likely to vote in a referendum. So constantly across all elections, there's some people who don't have the vote at all. So for example, before I was British, I could vote for my local councillor, but I couldn't have voted in a referendum, although I could, I'm a Cambridgeshire resident. So there's this group of people who are on low income, private renters, younger people, they're all less likely to vote in some and not other elections. So that's like, it's a big question of what, at what point the referendum is advisory. And I have to say, like, because we have some Brexit comparisons, before Brexit was actually implemented as a referendum decision, David Cameron, what did he do? He tried to negotiate and find a compromise with the EU on the migration issues alongside other things. And he said, okay, I tried to find a compromise. Here's the new deal with the EU. Then we have a referendum. So in a similar way, he kind of consulted and tried his best to compromise before he put the decision to the public. So not that I agree very much with David Cameron, but at least, he tried to find compromise before that. So I do, for those reasons, I can't really support a referendum as a solution in that sense. Some points have been mentioned around, for example, like, why does my partner who lives in Newmarket and actually drives to Cambridge for work, why wouldn't he have a say? And myself, who doesn't, own a car in Cambridge, will have a say. There's so many questions about the validity, I think, technicality of a referendum. But I want to end on this. I do agree there is a democratic deficit in a lot of the decision making. It's not only on this issue, it's a lot of decisions where people feel they don't have a say. And what is really interesting is this whole debate around making connections actually started with the Citizens' Assembly. So I wonder if this is an opportunity actually to recognize democratic deficit and think perhaps there are better ways to do democracy on such difficult decisions. If they started with the Citizen Assembly, which is actually representative of the local population, could it end with it? Could similar schemes end with something like this in the future? But I just don't think a referendum, for many reasons that I don't have time to fit in 5 minutes, makes sense in this moment, and it's quite premature in that sense. Thank you.